Playing here on Vybez Radio, the show we Cease N Sekkle with Iras Really KK Black Jesus.
And Aina Zizi, the original Roots daughter.
Yeah, man, and where can I catch a vibe?
You can catch a vibe. Nairobi on 104.5, of course. And you know, Mombasa, let me tell you, somebody told me in Mombasa, hakuna radio watu wengine usikiza. Ni 98.7 too. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, they're like Vybez Radio all the way. So big up Mombasa. And Nyeri, you can catch a vibe 98.8. Meru Massive 107.1 and Eldoret 107.5. Or you can get us on social media as well.
Yeah, man. Facebook, we are Vybez Radio. Every other social media platform, we are Vybez Radio KE. And on top of that, I hope you are logged on, streaming us live. Taking a look how we have Russ Benji in the building, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
www.vybezradio.co.ke.
Yes, and you know what? This is part 3 of the Haile Selassie special we're doing on Stir It Up.
Yes,
yeah, man. And you know, we discussed actually, Benji, on the first edition, we were just talking about His Majesty's younger days, how he grew up, his education. On the episode 2, we talked about his achievements, the African Union, and some of his speeches. But one thing we thought was so important, and that's why we wanted to have you in studio with us, is the significance of Haile Selassie to the Rastafari faith. And we had a lot of questions coming in, by the way, so many. So we are directing some of these questions that they've been asking us to you. And the first question is, who is Haile Selassie to Rastafari?
Okay, to answer that, the first thing that one needs to understand is that Rastafari Makonnen is actually Haile Selassie's name before he was crowned emperor in 1930, November 2nd. So when we talk of Rastafari, we are actually talking about Haile Selassie. And for us to understand the significance of Haile Selassie, we have to go back in time. Because you have to realize that, for one, African people had just come out from two evils that were committed against them. First, the evil of slavery, where Africans were taken from Africa and carried abroad and forced to go and work on slave plantations for no pay for 400 years. Then when they were done with that, the next one was colonialism. And with colonialism, the Europeans sat down in Berlin and carved up Africa according to their different spheres of influence. No consultation was done, you know, with Africans. And so when you look at Africans emerging from 400 years of slavery and the other Africans on the continent emerging from colonialism, from 1930 until 1957, when Ghana became free, there was only one voice that represented the whole of Africa and the conscience of mankind, and that is Emperor Haile Selassie. Because there was no African who could stand up and say anything at that time.
Yes.
Even our own freedom struggle was directly inspired by the goings-on in Ethiopia. Because the British got Africans to go and fight the Italians in Ethiopia. And when those Africans went there and restored the king, and they saw a black man ruling over black people, they got the idea to fight for their freedom. So even we who are talking about Mau and what have you, that was directly inspired by Haile Selassie and the liberation of Ethiopia. And then now we go to the significance now, because you see, after the long history of slavery and exploitation and oppression, and also on top of that, being imposed on a white Jesus in religion, which white Jesus really was not there historically. I mean, Jesus was not white. It's a fact, you know. But those are some of the challenges that black people were facing, so that when they saw the coronation of Haile Selassie in 1930, which event had been talked about and prophesied by Marcus Garvey, because Marcus Garvey told the Africans abroad, look to Africa for the crowning of a black king. And when that happens, then the redemption of the black man will come. And for sure, it is after the crowning of Emperor Haile Selassie and the liberation of Ethiopia that the liberation of Africa began in earnest. So that the liberation of Africa actually began with the liberation of Ethiopia. Another significance of His Majesty is that when they attacked Ethiopia in 1935, he went before the League of Nations to plead for his people. And in his plea before the League of Nations, he told them that if they did nothing, whatever has befallen Ethiopia was going to befall them.
Yeah.
He warned them that
Today is us.
yes, today it is us, tomorrow it will be you.
Yeah.
And they failed to listen. And for sure, 3.5 years later, Europe was plunged into the worst
World
chaos
war,
they
yeah.
have ever seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in fact, later on in retrospect, people said that if we had listened to Haile Selassie, maybe that war would not have taken place.
Yeah.
But because he's an African in a country called Ethiopia, which to some people doesn't mean anything, they dismiss him. But the prophecy came true. And we saw for sure whatever befell Europe was much worse than what befell Ethiopia.
Because they could have done with Mussolini right before even he went ahead and got into
Exactly. But they did not do that.
Yeah.
Because after all, what was at stake here? An African nation.
Yes.
If it was somebody else, maybe they would probably have put an effort. But because it was an African nation and the rest of Africa was under colonialism, they didn't feel to help.
Yeah.
Although when the war did turn against them, I believe out of their guilt, they decided to do something about it because they now saw
It's
the
pretty much
significance.
because they saw Mussolini would get hold of Ethiopia and it would be a stronghold for Italy. For them, it would be a backlash. Like if once the war started, Italy would have a stronghold somewhere in Africa where they could not kick him out.
Yes.
So yes, I most definitely keep it locked. It's Vybez Radio. The show is Cease N Sekkle. We have Ras Benji in the building with us, giving us more on the achievements and the life of Emperor Haile Selassie and the connection with Rastafari.
Vybez Radio, we rule the nation in this generation.
And we have Ras Benji in the building, you know what I mean?
Rastafari.
We have Ras Benji in the building, and my people, we are talking about the Emperor himself, Emperor Haile Selassie the first, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know, when we're off air, the discussions are going deep.
Yeah, going deep.
And then we have to remind each other that the people need to know this information.
Yes, sir.
And I could hear you guys speaking about the source of the Nile, the importance of it, the Ark of the Covenant, and it's really important. And also Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
All these things we've been talking about off air, we need to bring back so that people can, you know, be tuned into that.
Today we did the roots, rhyme, and reason on Addis Ababa culture. And the rhyme we took off was about the source of the Nile and about Aksum being the holy city in Ethiopia. Ras Benji, can you please give us some more info on that?
Yes, the story of Aksum centers on the Ark of the Covenant, which is the central religious object that caused the building of the temple in Jerusalem. Now, according to the story, and if you even read the Bible story, there's a point at which the ark stops being mentioned. And yet it had such a central place in the worship of Israel. Where did it go? This is because God caused it to leave Israel, because Israel had apostatized. And he kept it away in a safe place until such time that when the Messiah comes, the ark will go back to Jerusalem. But in the meantime, the Ethiopians have been looking after it. And because of this knowledge, and people, the early European explorers knew something about the ark. You know, just like you see the Indiana Jones movie and the Hunters of the Lost Ark and what have you. They knew that the ark was in Africa, and especially at the source of the Nile, which is Lake Tana. But now when they are searching for it, they ended up following the White Nile and ended up in East Africa. And missed the whole route to the source. And when it was finally discovered why they wanted to know the source of the Nile, it was because of the story of Prester John. There was a Christian king in Africa who the Europeans had heard about but had never met. And they thought that he would be a very valuable ally in the fight against the Muslims. These things have been going on for a long time. So, but they kind of missed the plot. They didn't find where the source was. Later on now, many years later, Rastafari come and start giving the information to the people. And people get to start realizing that, yes, Ethiopia is the oldest Christian nation. The Nile is mentioned in the second chapter of the book Genesis. In fact, in verse 13 is the first mention of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is mentioned 66 times in the Bible. So Ethiopia is not a stranger to the Bible. It's just that it's a mystery in the hands of God. And a lot of people cannot be able to decipher it because they cannot understand how right next door we have the oldest Christian nation. But the Bible testifies of that because even Philip, when he was preaching to the Ethiopian eunuch, it was just a few days after the resurrection and ascension of the Lord. So the Ethiopians got to know about Christ from a long time ago. And before that, they knew about Solomon and the Queen of Sheba because that is where the line where Haile Selassie and the Ethiopian emperors come from. So that when the Rastafarians came and now brought this knowledge to the front and for people to see, then, people got amazed. And yet it is something which is so interesting. It is so mystical. And at the same time, we are right here, right next door. By the way, Kenyans also need to know the first head of state to visit independent Kenya is Emperor Haile Selassie. The longest avenue in Nairobi, and of which there are only 3, is Haile Selassie Avenue. So respect is due to this man. And a lot of people really need to do, study. They need to study. You can Google the important utterances of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie and see that he was a different kind of leader. When you also look at the way he was received in Jamaica, the groundation, it's an event which has never happened again. No world leader has ever received such a welcome ever again. So His Majesty is right up there. We as Rastafarians say we will never relinquish the divinity of His Imperial Majesty.
Yes. And it's amazing you bring the Ground Nation issue because we want to know the significance of Ground Nation to Rastafari.
It was very important because, remember, coming from slavery and colonialism, black people everywhere had nothing to look up to. And when Marcus Garvey said black is beautiful, he began to turn the tide. People began to have now confidence in themselves and start seeing themselves as human beings equal with everybody else. So Haile Selassie now takes the baton from there and speaks as the conscience of the world. Because when Haile Selassie was speaking before the League of Nations, he was the conscience of the world. And we as Africans, we owe him a very big debt, because he's the father of African unity. He's the one who caused the African leaders to come together. Of course, with a lot of help from people like Nkrumah, Kenyatta, all those early leaders. And they came together in Addis Ababa and formed the Organization of African Unity, a continental organization which had never happened before. Remember, this is just a few short years after Africans began getting independence. So we can never underrate the man because he up to today, even when Africans need to discuss anything, they go to Addis Ababa. So we can't change that. And we as Kenyans also, we are very privileged by the close union that was there between Kenyatta and Haile Selassie. For many years, before the introduction of visa-free movement in Africa, Kenya and Ethiopia had a visa-free arrangement. We as Kenyans could go to Ethiopia without visa. Ethiopians come here without visa. His Majesty was trying to give an example which if other African leaders had picked up, we would be so far ahead today. You can imagine if we have no visas. It would be so easy.
It's really like a spiritual thing because a lot of things we've talked about today, Benji, we've been talking about on the show. We've been talking about a visa-less Africa, borderless Africa, one Africa. And, also, let's get out of this brainwash. Like whatever we are taught by the colonials in their colonial school systems, we live by it. And right now we have so much information. As you said, you can go online. You can tune in to Cease N Sekkle. You can just find out so many things for your own self and make your own decision and decide what kind of African do you want to be.
Exactly.
Vybez Radio, we rule the nation in this generation.
Them days by Dynamic. Them days lakini zilikuwa zikishika yenyewe. Yeah,
Big up
man.
everyone in Ziwani, watu wangu, mtu yangu.
Yeah, respect. And we have Ras Benji, and we have been discussing about Haile Selassie and some of the questions you guys have been sending us in. And, Ras Ken is here, and he's asking, which Bible do the 12 tribes of Israel read?
Well, currently we use the King James Version because when you do the study and find out about the way the Word of God has arrived at where it is today, one, we find that it has been preserved throughout time. And when you compare in terms of accuracy, you find that the King James has a higher fidelity. Yeah, so we normally use the King James.
King James Bible.
Yes. Yeah, and we also had another question when someone was asking, what church did you join, like in the Rastafari? I think he didn't understand before when we talked about it, so you can explain a little bit about it.
Well, I'm a member of the 12 Tribes of Israel, which is a Rastafarian organization that is functioning worldwide. And the requirement to join is to read the Bible for yourself, a chapter a day, and to pay your subscription. And then you continue with the vibes, because after all, we are in the business of looking for lost souls.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to know something I also found very interesting about the 12 tribes is, usually when you go to, I went to Catholic school, so I understand how they read the Bible, is they will say today, let's go to Proverbs. Yeah. And then we're going to go read one line. And then tomorrow they're going to say, let's go to Genesis. So, it kind of mashes you up because this is a book that was written from beginning to end. And what I really respect about the 12 tribes is they read it from beginning to end, a chapter a day, meaning from Genesis all the way to the end. You can understand the flow of the story.
Yes.
And Benji, I want to ask you, how many times have you read the Bible up till now?
I've kind of lost count.
Okay.
Because you keep reading, and every time you read, you discover new things, which is like you're reading for the first time.
Yeah.
So at every point, I would say at least 7 to 8 times, I think. Or more.
7 to 8 times, guys. That means from the beginning to end. So don't come and tell Rasta don't know what they're talking about, because let me tell you, they read and they read. And of course, Riddick, you had a question about
Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Only people don't know that Emperor Selassie was a big helper to the cause for South Africa itself. And Nelson Mandela, could you give us the connection and how the Emperor worked with him?
Yes. One of the things that a lot of people have done over the years is to underrate the contribution of Emperor Haile Selassie to the liberation of Africa. And especially when it comes to the Mandela story. Remember, the apartheid regime in those days had made it impossible for Mandela to operate. And he was able to sneak out of the country. And when he did go to Ethiopia, His Majesty gave him an Ethiopian passport and gave him training, training for the liberation struggle. And it is said that when Mandela was leaving, the army guy who was training him gave him a pistol, symbolically, to go and start the armed struggle, which we now know as Umkhonto Wesizwe, the armed wing of ANC. And if it was not for that passport that he received from Emperor Haile Selassie, I don't think we would even know about Mandela. And in fact, when Mandela was released, he said to him, the place he really wanted to go and visit was Ethiopia. He said to him, the significance of Ethiopia cannot compare with the US and Europe and all those other destinations. For him, all he wanted to do was to go to Ethiopia. And that's the thing which all Rastafarians have been saying all the while. There is something special about Ethiopia. And His Majesty is one who really brought it out to the world and made us realize we have a gem, a precious jewel right with us here, and we do not know. Because the story goes way back to the Queen of Sheba. And the Queen of Sheba carried for Solomon 4 tons of gold. This is never in the history of the world has a woman given so much gold to one man. You know, she was not a gold digger. She was a gold giver.
She was a gold giver.
Yes, and she gave 4 tons of it.
Yes,
and Christ mentions such is the significance of her that even Christ mentions her in his testimony, and he says that the Queen of the South will rise against this generation because she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and a greater than Solomon is here. So even Christ himself points out that the Ethiopian queen, she knew there was something else. It was not the gold that brought her. It was gold. It was God she was looking for, not gold. God. And she found God.
Yeah, because once she got there, Nazizi mentioned the Kebra and August.
Yes.
And once you read it, you find out once she got there, she was very, very into the wisdom of King Solomon himself.
Yes.
And the gifts she brought, man.
4 tons of gold. I mean, 1 ounce of gold costs $1,500. Go and do the math.
Go do the math. And yes, I will be back asking one more question and talking about Haile Selassie when we come back.
Vybez Radio, we rule the nation in this generation.
Selassie soldiers. And that's what we are right here on Cease N Sekkle. The tune is from Chronics, Sizzler, Protege, Kabaka Pyramid, name them. Selassie soldiers, just like the team Ikondaniapa, Cease N Sekkle. Yeah, man. And we've been discussing with Benji and we're about to say goodbye. But before, we have some questions still from the team Cease N Sekkle who are listening in. And Riddick, what are the questions?
Yes, we have a German youth asking. He would love to know the connection between Emperor Haile Selassie and Jesus Christ.
Well, Emperor Haile Selassie and Jesus Christ are from the same family, which is the house of David. So, contrary to what some people may think, there is no competition between Selassie and Christ. Selassie told us to follow Christ. And he gave us the example, not just by words, but also by deeds. And it is actually by virtue of the anointing that the king becomes divine. Because remember, when Saul was crowned as king of Israel, even when he was hunting down David could not strike him. Because he said he cannot strike the Lord's anointed. So the king, the divinity of the king is through the anointing. That is what people need to understand.
Yes, amazing. And I think that also answers the reason why most people have been asking us, why is Emperor Haile Selassie crowned as King of Kings and Lord of Lords? And the title was also with Christ himself.
Yes. Those the messianic titles are in the Bible, but it is also important to know that in Ethiopia, the system of government that they had, every region had their king. And then the emperor now was the king of all the kings. So that's where the title comes from. It is also in the Bible. Just even the Lion of Judah was one of the titles of the Ethiopian emperor. But when you look at the imperial crest, you find that it depicts an empty throne. Because in their thinking and in their mind, they know that Christ is the final king who will sit on the throne. So, and the kings of Israel are types of Christ until Christ comes.
And one last one, very, very quick last one. Papa Kimatu is asking, please uliza story ya marijuana in connection with the teachings of the Holy Book.
Well, the Bible, when you read the Bible, you see that God is a creator. And when he gives the creation account, when God had finished creating everything, he said it was good. So if it is good, then who are we to say otherwise? That's all I can say.
Very true, very true.
Thank you, Benji, for joining us. And
Asante.
yes, me and Ras Benji are going to be a reggae in the sun this Sunday. So if you want to catch a vibe with us, go get your ticket. And you'll catch us there.
Yes, Rastafari.
Vybez Radio, we rule the nation in this generation.